Well, let me tell you. If time exists, there isn't enough of it in anyone's life with which to reach a finite answer to that question. What a multi-million piece jigsaw puzzle that question is. What happened before the beginning and after the end? It's a bit like asking what's north of the North Pole or south of the South Pole, isn't it? I must say it tickles the mind in the most delightful way, because you see, we're all caught in this linguistic trap, a conceptual maze of our own making. You see, the concept of the beginning and the end are part and parcel of our incredibly linear way of thinking. We, in the West especially, are so enamored with the idea of time as a straight line, birth at one end, death at the other. But when we look to other traditions and philosophies, well, we find a much richer tapestry of thought. Consider this. When we speak of the beginning, we're already presupposing time. But time, you see, is a slippery little customer. It's not at all what we commonly think it is. As that old rascal St. Augustine said, "I know what time is, but when you ask me, I don't." Now, isn't that a hoot? So let's play with this idea for a moment. If we mistake time for a sort of line, stretching from the past through the present and into the future, well, that's just a convenient fiction. It's a way of chopping up the seamless flow of existence into pieces manageable for the mind. But you see, that's just a map, and certainly not the terrain. It's like looking at a river and trying to point out where one bit of water ends and another begins. It's all connected, you see. The great Zen masters said, "Show me your original face before your parents were born." And that's not just some cryptic Eastern mumbo-jumbo. They're pointing at something profound. The artificiality of our divisions, our desperate attempts to slice up reality into bite-sized chunks. And now let us turn to the West, to the Greek philosopher Parmenides. Parmenides argued that all change is illusion, that reality is one unchanging, eternal whole. Sounds a bit like what some of our Hindu friends have been saying for millennia, doesn't it? The idea that underneath all this apparent flux and change, there's a fundamental unity, a timeless now, if you will. The Hindus speak of kalpas and yugas, immense cycles of time that dwarf our little human notions of beginning and end. According to them, the universe is born, exists, and then dissolves in an eternal dance of creation, preservation, and destruction. And what is most fascinating is that this process is cyclical. So in a sense, the beginning is never really the beginning, and the end is never truly the end. It's more like the turning of a wheel with no true starting or stopping point. Or in Taoism, we read that before the beginning, there was the Tao, an infinite potential from which all existence springs. And after the end, well, everything returns to the Tao. It's like waves rising from and falling back into the ocean. The ocean is always there, whether we see the waves or not. In Buddhism, particularly in Zen, the notion of beginning and end is similarly deconstructed. Zen masters would often point out that clinging to these concepts is just another way of getting ensnared by the dualistic thinking that they seek to transcend. Dogen Zenji, a prominent Zen monk, emphasized the idea of being time, or uji. He suggests that every moment is an expression of the eternal. So the question of what comes before or after becomes irrelevant, because each moment is complete in itself. So what happened before the beginning? Well, I'd say that's rather like asking what's outside the universe? The question assumes that time and the universe are contained within something larger, but what if they're not? What if time itself is an infinite product of the universe, not a stage on which the universe plays out its drama? And as for what happens after the end, well, that's the same problem in reverse, isn't it? We're stuck thinking in terms of before and after, but maybe that's not how reality fundamentally works. You see, we're like a gardener looking through a slit in a fence at a snake passing by. He sees the head, then the body, then the tail, and he thinks, aha, the head caused the tail, but if he could see the whole snake at once, he'd realize how absurd that is. The snake is one whole being, head and tail included. Perhaps reality is like that. Perhaps the beginning and the end are just arbitrary points we've chosen on the great snake of existence. And if we could somehow step back and see the whole thing at once, we'd laugh at how we've been puzzling over the relationship between the head and the tail. In essence, what lies before the beginning and after the end is a return to the infinite, the eternal, the ungraspable essence of reality itself. It is the mystery from which all arises and to which all returns. And as we navigate our little lifetimes, perhaps greatest wisdom we can glean from these diverse traditions is to live fully in the present, appreciating the eternal now, which after all is the only reality we ever truly know. And after all, that's where the party is, isn't it?